Hello, everyone. We're nearing the end of the Q&A series. I don't know how many episodes we're in now, but let's go ahead and hop into it. So we've got Uncle Ruckus here asking, where does the tradition of wearing feathered helmets come from? Especially because Thanes wear them. So ultimately, it's the same logic as our own culture. It looks very impressive, to have wings spreading out from your helms. Has significant symbolism to sport the feather of a ferocious bird of, one of the ultimate. I'm gonna start over. Hey everyone, welcome back. I think this will be the last episode of the Q&A series. We'll see how it pans out. I don't know how many we're in now, but a lot. So Uncle Ruckus asks, where does the tradition of wearing a feathered helmet come from? What does it symbolize that the wearer is a Thane come from? Okay, so I think he's asking, why do the Thanes wear like feathered helms, especially like in Total War Warhammer? So ultimately, it's the same logic as our own culture. It looks very impressive, and it has significant symbolism to sport the feathers of like those massive aggressive creatures like griffins or hippogriffs. And for dwarves, ultimately, perhaps it lets you feel a little taller. Makes you a little more intimidating. But I think ultimately it's kind of a symbolism thing of having those. I think the feathers are ultimately supposed to represent things that, like ferocious beasts, that dwarves are very, very familiar with in their native regions in the mountains, which of course are griffins and hippogriffs primarily. But it's based on our own culture. So whatever our answer is to that for ancient empires, there's your answer. Citizen Kane asks, I like that name. That's funny. Any instances in which a dwarf has taken back a grudge or admitted that they've gone too far in pursuing one? So admitted that they feel the cost has been too high? Yes, absolutely. But they will keep going. An oath is an oath. And grudges must be avenged. There is no price that's too high. The only grudge I've ever seen taken back is in Orcslayer, which I won't spoil. You just can read that. As for grudges that definitely went too far, feel free to pop over to the Legendary Lord lore video for King Belegar Ironhammer. He had a number of grudges that went too far. Born Dreamer. Hey man, how's it going? Ask, I know it's been said the Chaos Gods prioritize their victims, like Slaanesh loves to torment the elves, Nurgle loves humans for they fear death the most. Which of the four gods love to go after dwarves the most? So all the Chaos Gods love men. Men are like prime meat for them. But Nurgle has the greatest beef with the dwarves. The dwarves are particularly resistant to his machinations and his designs. So Nurgle has a very special place of hatred in his heart for the dwarves. So the one who primarily goes after them, if given the option between the four, it'd be the grandfather Nurgle. Cube asks, are there no female dwarves who fought with the army? How do they get the resources to make ale? There are famous dwarf female warriors. They're just very, very rare. There was a particularly nasty dwarf queen, Queen Helga. You can look her up. She was notorious. As for resources to make beer, dwarves have a ton of hidden farms located on the slopes of the mountains that can only be accessed from inside the hold or by flying. And they actually do use quite a bit of bizarre materials, and of course they trade humans. The primary reason dwarves trade with humans is for food and for stuff to make like ale and crap like that. All right, Uncle Ruckus asks, would a dwarf try to tame a griffin or a demigriff to help them in battle? Never. Too unreliable. Best case scenario, something that dwarf rangers do frequently is they will go antagonize or taunt a griffin or a large monster like that, and will lead it into the basically guide its warpath into the midst of an enemy army. So they will steal an egg from a griffin or piss off a wyvern and then kind of guide them into an army that's marching, like a beastman army, so that the monster just like slams into the army and just starts tearing them up. Dwarf Rangers will do crap like that frequently, but that's like the closest they would ever get to taming a monster. Scion of Hashit, good to see you, my man, asks, are there any significant conflicts that have occurred between the dwarves and chaos dwarves? Pretty on topic question for considering your name. But not really, funny enough. There have not really been any famous wars, like full wars between the two races. They did, however, have a very ugly conflict. The only one that I know of that you can like read in a book is there was a super famous group of Chaos Dwarves that fought alongside the Warriors of Chaos in the book Road of Skulls, which is a Gotrek and Felix novel. But Road of Skulls deals with a siege of Karak-Kadrin that the Chaos Dwarves are a notable part of. Before the Storm of Chaos was retconned by the End Times, there was actually a massive Chaos Dwarf invasion in, I think it was Peak Pass, which is up by Karak-Kadrin, which is, I believe, what the Road of Skulls retconned into being about. It is, actually. Yeah, so the Road of Skulls kind of replaced that battle. But in the original Storm of Chaos, it was like a huge Chaos Dwarf army joined up with the Warriors of Chaos. And that was the first really notable time the Dwarves and the Chaos Dwarves had like a big, like no-holds-barred battle between the two of them. And you can read about that battle in the Masters of Stone and Steel Omnibus, the King of Zufbar story. At the end of the book, he details the Battle of Peak Pass. Where he fights like what's it called? One of the colossi of the Chaos Dwarves. It wasn't a demon engine, I forget what it was. But in any event, surprisingly, the two of them don't go to blows that often, and it's mainly just because they're so far away from each other. Like the Chaos Dwarves are so deep in the Skull Lands that it's just such a pain in the butt to get to them. So that's the main reason they don't conflict very often. And the Chaos Dwarves understand that they can't afford to fight the Dwarves. They know if they like did a big invasion heading west and they tried to fight the Dwarves would have them grotesquely outnumbered, and the Dwarves would curb stomp the Chaos Dwarves if it came to like an Empire versus Empire fight. So the Chaos Dwarves rely very heavily on the Dwarves kind of ignoring them because the Dwarves don't want to deal with it. Cube asks, has there ever been a civil war amongst the Dwarves? No, we've already been over that significantly. If a king does something that makes the others go like... have the Dwarves ever tried to supplant a bad king? No. Dwarves would never, ever, ever attempt to dethrone a king, no matter how bad he was. There is an excellent example of this in the War of Vengeance series. There is a terrible king in the War of Vengeance who literally goes insane. And the dwarves know that. And they never, ever consider... because you have to remember that all dwarves make an oath to their king. There are significant oaths of fealty. And a dwarf never breaks an oath. To be an oath breaker is the greatest sin possible. So no, they would never, ever, ever try and dethrone a king, even if he was like the worst thing ever. Agranar asks, are there any notable interactions between the dwarves and some of the lesser factions, like Araby or the Amazons? Mainly just trade between like the empires. There are, of course, like notable interactions on an individual level. Probably the best one I can think of is there's a I think it's 2 parts or 3 parts, but there's a 2-part short story series called The Tomb of Gold that you can read. You can buy it from Black Library for like $2. It's super cheap, but it's also very short. But The Tomb of Gold is a series of short stories that has dwarves dealing with Amazons, and the Lizardmen are the antagonists of the story. But you can read that if you want to. So that's a story that includes Amazons and dwarves. Duke Baragus asks, have there ever been any interactions between the Norse dwarves and Norskins, except for war, of course? Yeah, all the time. Especially the southern Norskins. If you watch my Geography of Norska video, I talk about that of the tribes, the southern ones tend to be much more reasonable and not crazy, and they actually are willing and totally able to trade and have cultural exchanges with like the Empire, Bretonia, Atilia, Araby. Like they're totally down for trade and stuff like that. And the dwarves are, especially the Norscan dwarves, trade frequently with them and they're vague allies. Like the Norscan dwarves will help the more reasonable tribes of Norska against the crazy ones, at least until a chaos invasion swoops in and they all the Norskins sign up to join with the chaos baddies. In which case, no. Then they're at war. But yeah, in times of peace, yeah, the dwarves will trade with them. Owes you money. Do dwarf girls have beards? No. Wrens do not have beards, no. Vain Warlord. Good to see you, my man. What are the dwarves' opinions on the Bretonians and vice versa? Is there any significant difference in the way Bretonians and Imperials are perceived by dwarves? So dwarves find the Bretonians to be very peculiar. Kind of silly. The Grey Mountain Dwarves, who, of course, live in the split between Empire and Bretonia, they like the Bretonians a bunch and are totally happy to trade with them and whatever. But, like, Thorgrim Grudgebearer finds the Bretonians to be very concerning. He finds their fondness for mounted warfare to be very bizarre and unfortunate, and he also considers the code of chivalry to be very naive, and he finds it way too elven in aspect. There's actually there's like a paragraph about King Leonker dealing with Thorgrim Grudgebearer because the two of them teamed up to take out a bandit king, and Lewin begs for mercy for the bandits' underlings, because Lewin tells Thorgrim that according to the laws of chivalry, these men should be granted mercy because they only joined up with the bandit because they needed to eat, or they had to support their families. Like, they didn't have a choice. And he literally says that they had no choice, they were going to die. And Thorgrim says they did have a choice. They could have chosen to starve. And then he gives the order for them all to be decapitated. And Thorgrim's perspective is that the Bretonians, who are an even younger nation than the Empire of Men, the dwarves need to be a good example for them to teach them to be more stalwart and less elven in their... he finds the code of chivalry to be very silly and naive. So overall, the dwarves are less fond of the Bretonians than they are of the Empire. Dwarves really don't like knights, and dwarves really do not like elves, and of course the culture of the elves has had a significant impact on the Bretonian culture. Because just like the dwarves were there to guide the Empire, because the men of the Empire have a significantly dwarven-based culture and technologies, and a lot of their views, like their view on magic, is very heavily shaped by dwarves. So like how the dwarves help develop the race of the men of the Empire, the elves help shape and develop the race of men in Bretonia. So, and then the final last question is from Cube. Of course it is. Cube, I think, had the most asked questions in this Q&A. Cube asks, are there no evil dwarves that are not chaos dwarves? There are plenty of evil dwarves, and that there are many, many cruel dwarves due to personality or circumstance. There are dwarves that are so greedy that they will gladly burn down an orphanage full of innocent children just to get at bars of gold that are buried underneath. There are evil dwarves just like there are evil men, even if they don't necessarily worship the dark gods or are doing blood sacrifices or demon smithing or stuff like that. Elves, men, and dwarves, halflings and ogres even, have evil members among them. Dwarves are not a hat. They're not They're not a one-size-fits-all group that every single dwarf is the same. There are dwarves that are less greedy than others. There are dwarves that are less stubborn. There are dwarves that take oaths less seriously. There are dwarves that are evil. There are dwarves that are very noble. They're different, just like us. So hopefully that answers that. And with that, we are at the end of this Q&A. At long last, we have arrived at the conclusion, and I apologize if you hear the mouse clicking because I need to check one little thing real quick, which is that I want to see who we should do next, because I think I know who I want to do next. Okay, yep. So, in light of the fact that I'm trying to wrap up the Carrick's 8 Peaks lore stuff, and we've already done Skaven in the past, which we will definitely return to the Skaven at some point. But a race that we haven't done that I bet people have a ton of questions about and want to know about, let's do greenskins. So in this video, in the comment section down below, or you can go to the Q&A channel in the Discord, I will be collecting questions on greenskins for, let's say, a week. 1 week from today is when I will close questions and start working on the video. So if you have any questions whatsoever that have anything to do with greenskins, killing them, aiding them, about their culture, their buildings, people who have fought them, anything that involves orcs and goblins, trolls and giants, what have you, feel free to ask away, and I really look forward to answering all your questions on that. I'd like to have the Q&A series essentially be a monthly series, so once a month we will have however many episodes to deal with that. So hope you're all having a great time, and I hope you all enjoyed this series. I think there's going to be 6 or 7 episodes total. So I appreciate you all being around for it. I intend to make them a lot more regular because I'd really like to get back to focusing the channel on having more lore content than anything else. Like, I still want to have a significant amount of gaming content, sure, but I'd like to get back to the core of the channel. So in any event, thank you all so much for watching. I don't think there's anything else I'm too super worried about. So without further ado, I will catch you guys next time. Be sure to take care of yourselves. Stay safe, stay healthy, all that jazz. See you around.